What's up, pimps and players? Welcome to Monte Poker, episode 7. On today's episode, I'm going to teach you how to lose with ace jack, specifically ace of clubs, jack of diamonds. I swear I got that hand like 10 times on this episode. Anyhow, this episode is once again out of my favorite card room, Outlaws. Let's jump into it. Starting off the night with $180 on the button. We're currently playing six-handed, waiting to get onto the main game. When we look down at ace of clubs, six of clubs, I go ahead and just limp in here. The pots have been pretty limp heavy all night, and then I call a small raise over 220. I would traditionally raise with this hand in this position, but just because the pots have been so small and nobody's been calling any raises, I didn't want to raise up until this point. But we go ahead and we get it in and we go three ways to the flop, which comes seven of clubs, six of diamonds, ace of hearts. We flop two pair. Absolutely fantastic. When the action checks over to us, I fire out for an additional $20 here. We quickly get called by the small blind, and then the middle position player seems to be thinking it over a little bit, but eventually does put in the call as well. So we have 140 in this pot and 140 left in our stack. I'm debating how much to raise here or to bet once the action gets over to us. Both opponents seem to not like the turn card all that much. They both check it over to me, and I want to bet enough that we basically just get the rest of it in on the river, but I don't want to jam either because I don't think either of these players is going to call an all in. So I elect to bet $85 in this situations, but unfortunately that seems to be too much. I probably should have made it about 45 to 60-ish because neither of our opponents call. I show them the two pair and then we scoop a $100 profit in this hand. Moving on to our second hand, we pick up ace of clubs, jack of hearts on the button. And by button, I mean small blind because the button is behind me, but the graphics are wrong. It looks like there was a $6 limp got around the table. And then when the action got back to me, I decided to bump it up here for around $50. So going back around the table, we get two folds, one customer in the middle, and then the rest of the players go ahead and fold out. So we're off to this flop, heads up. The board comes out three of hearts, queen of clubs, eight of diamonds, and I don't have too much left behind, a little bit over a pot size bet here. So I go ahead and just jam, hoping that our opponent doesn't have a queen. I'm basically repping ace queen here or any overpairs to the board. We luckily get the fold and make $71 on this hand. So it looks like we have a little over 200 again. There's a dealer change, so we're playing a PLO Bomb Pot for $10. This game is capped. You may have seen a couple of these on the blog before. We don't really flop much. We just hit a pair of jacks, so everybody checks through on this initial board. Going to the turn, we pick up two pair, and this is why I try to avoid playing PLO, because I'm sitting here thinking that two pair is good. So I bet out a little bit onto this board here and actually get called before I put the money out onto the felt, which is a bit concerning. After we make the bet, people end up potting it. I know that these players already have a Broadway here, but I don't think I can let my hand go for some stupid reason. This is why I try to avoid these in the first place, but we're going to chase the full house because in PLO it always feels like you hit, right? So the river brings a seven of hearts. We did not get there. Our opponent, of course, shows us king queen for the straight. Definitely should not have been in the spot. Is what it is. I need to stop chasing. So we are on the small blind, sitting on $176 here. There is a $24 pot brewing when I look down at pocket nines. We go ahead and just go for the call here. We could easily raise, but we've been running kind of bad. There's already some money in here. I'm just going to try to set mine since we're in bad position and we can't really, get the information that we need. So going to this board here, the run out comes out 8-4 deuce with two clubs. So we're beating the board. I'm going to go ahead and just fire for $15 here. It looks like we pick up some interest from the middle position player here, and then the remaining two players fold. So this is pretty ideal. The turn comes a jack of diamonds. I'm going to go ahead and bet again here. I am putting our opponent on a club draw just because of the board run out. I don't really see her. I mean, even if she had an ace eight, I don't really see her calling once this jack comes out on the turn, and it looks like she wants to call. So the most likely thing she has here is a club draw. She could have ace five, she could have ace three as well, maybe some sort of combo draw. And then the river comes out a four of hearts. I don't think she's calling much of anything here with a withdraw, but I'm just gonna put all the chips in the middle in case she does have some sort of pair on this board and doesn't believe us, but that doesn't seem to be the case. We scoop $89. So I accidentally missed the footage for this hand, so I'm gonna have to run you through it real quick. So I'm sitting under the gun +1 with pocket sevens. There's a $15 open in early position and 5 people call. The cutoff, the button, both fold behind me. The flop brings us 10 ace 6 of hearts here. The action checks over to us and we go ahead and just check it back. We were set mining with this hand and completely missed. And then we get a free turn card, which brings us a 7 of diamonds. So we turn our set. At this point, we have my buddy Jordy who leads out for $20. Action gets over to me with a couple of callers and I re-raise it to 60. Jordy re-raises again to 150. I rip it all in and then he calls. At this point, Jordy announces that he has a set and then I say me too. We both flip over our cards. He sees my pocket sevens. He has pocket sixes. We see the queen of hearts on the river and we are totally good here. My heart initially dropped when he said a set because I thought he had tens. You want to know the worst part? I didn't realize till afterwards I wasn't recording that hand. At least I made it in the vlog. I'm so sorry, Jordy. I'm the worst. We start the next hand on the cutoff with 517 in our stack with ace of clubs, a jack of diamonds here. There's an open and under the gun, a call, and then a player bumps it up to $60. This player just sat down not too long ago, so I have no idea what his 3-betting range is, how strong or weak it is. So I really don't want to get involved here with ace jack offsuit. A couple people after me decide to fold as well, but luckily somebody down the line ends up getting curious and calling, and that entices the person after him to call as well. The board came out jack high and the opponent that raised pre-flop ended up having ace jack. We would have chopped, but I think it was a good fold. About 10 minutes go by and we pick up ace of clubs, a jack of diamonds yet again here. I end up raising to $16, but I didn't realize there was a straddle beforehand, so I had to bump it up to 20. A few of the players that are after me end up folding, but then the cutoff ends up putting in the call along with the button. Small blind takes another peek at his cards, but ends up opting for the fold. And the guy that 3-bet us off the last hand when we had this literal same hand decides to raise it yet again, except this time he's raising to 100. So begrudgingly, I decide to once again fold, despite it ending up in a chop the last time I folded. I was getting kind of annoyed that this kept happening, but it is what it is. Luckily this time both the opponents end up folding, so we don't have to see whether or not we would have had the winner. So let's just pat ourselves on the back for another good fold here, hopefully. All right, let's get to an actual run out this time. So we are under the gun with 472 in our stacks when we pick up the rockets. Let's freaking go. So I decide to raise once again, but unfortunately I am not paying attention to the button straddles once again. So even though I try to make it 15 to go here, the dealer throws me back 5 because of the $10 big blind straddle, and I did not make it enough to raise up to 20 this time. So the action gets around the table. We have this pot going 5 ways. The button decides to check it, which is pretty smart on his part, because if he would have raised, we definitely would have made this ridiculously expensive. So going to the board run out here, we see 6 jack of diamonds, jack of spades. Yikes. This is not a good flop for aces, especially 5 ways. I'm gonna go ahead and just bet here to see where we're at. I bet $20 onto this flop. I don't want to inflate it too much and keep it as small as possible. We get 1 customer, the button folds, small blind folds, and the big blind folds. So we're off to this flop heads up. I'm going to go ahead and just check it over to our opponent here and just go into check call mode. Don't think I can fold this hand, but I'm not going to play for a huge amount either. 8 of spades on the turn, doesn't really change much. It looks like he bets about 35 here, so we're going to go ahead and just put in the call. And like I said, I'm just going to go ahead and check the river here unless it comes an ace, and just have to pay him off with his jacks. He flips over what seems to be a pair of 6s. My aces are actually good. So we end up scooping a $100 profit here. This next hand brings us King Jack suited in middle position +1. Looking at the action, we get in $6 limp, I believe is what people have out on the board right now. So there's 2 callers for the $6 limp. One person folds. The middle position player decides to raise it up to $15, and then I re-raise here to 50. This is a little bit bigger than I typically go with this hand, but the goal here is to isolate, hopefully with the player behind me, get this hand heads up. There's also a good chance that we end up scooping the dead money on the table, but ideally I'd like to just see a flop with this hand. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be the case. The player behind us decides to fold, so we throw $1 in the middle and we take our small little profit here. Looks like I forgot to update the position graphics again, so we are under the gun. I decided to raise to $20 with ace king offsuit here. We got 500-ish in our stack. We got 2 callers, 3 callers, 4 callers. Oh my goodness, we have not been raising very much and people have been folding to like $15 opens, so we got a lot more action than we anticipated with this hand here. The flop comes out 2, 6, 3, 2 clubs here, so I'm gonna go ahead and just c-bet with our ace king here. I elect to go with $60 since it is a $100 pot. We don't want to make it too cheap and keep people in here with some pretty garbage holdings. The villain number 1 starts table talking a little bit about watching the vlog, and he says that I like to bluff, which I just smirk at because I mean, it's a c-bet. It's not necessarily a bluff per se, but it is a bluff because we just have ace high right now. I do think I'm ahead of a lot of hands, but somebody could easily have something better on this board, and I am kind of representing a pocket pair or exactly what I'm holding, so kind of bluffing, not really bluffing. Anyhow, we get 2 players that decide to put in the call. Jeff is one of them on the button, and then our buddy Jordy is thinking it over a little bit, but does elect to eventually fold here. So we're gonna go off to the turn 3 ways, which does improve our hand a little bit. It gives us a wheel draw and the nut flush draw. So I go ahead and check this over to the villains with the intention of calling a reasonable size bet here. So the villain in the middle is thinking it over again, but then ends up putting in a check. And then Jeff decides to jam here. Now, having the math right in front of me and being able to look it over slowly and not having to calculate what I think the pot is in real time while trying to make this decision, I'm now looking at it, and he bet about 159. For some reason, I misheard at the time. I thought they said 190. With 150, I'm getting about 27% to make this call. I'm putting Jeff on an overpair above this board, potentially with the jack of clubs, but that doesn't change the math up too much for me. I have about a 29% chance to win the hand if he is not holding a club. If he is holding a club, I think I have about 31% because both of my overs are going to be good if they pair up, and I can also win with a 5 or any club. Now that's with the correct math. When I thought the bet was 190, that percentage kind of drops closer to about 24%. So I was trying to figure out how many hands I was ahead of versus behind. If Jeff's happened to have a 5 here and a club, my percentage would drop significantly and we would not be priced in to make this call. I really wish I was acting after the player behind me, because if he called behind me, I would call this in a heartbeat and not worry about it because we'd be getting great odds to make the call. And then after we fold, we see our opponent put in the chips, which is really upsetting. And what's even more upsetting than that is that the club hit the river. The 6 of clubs hits. So Jeff shows us the king of clubs. He was just bluffing his face off with an over with the flush draw, and then villain number 2 shows a straight. So we definitely would have scooped this pot. Sucks to suck. Now that I do the math with the 150 with the hand that I thought Jeff had, we actually had the right price to call, so we should have been in there. We need to get better at doing these calculations in real time and not making these mistakes. At least it's going to a friend. Nice hand, Jeff. I'll try to get it back next time. With 440 in our stack on the small blind, we look down at 10 of clubs, 10 of diamonds. We have a $6 under the gun straddle here. We have the under the gun +1 player putting in the call. Middle position folds, middle position +1, ends up raising it up here. It's our buddy Jeff, and he says $6 is not enough. He wants to play for 25. My boy, we are coming for you, and I am ready. Jordy takes a peek at his cards and then ends up putting in the fold as well. The action gets over to the later position player players here, and the cutoff decides to put in the call along with myself. Going to the flop 5 ways, we see 6 of hearts, 9 of diamonds, 3 of spades. This is a wonderful flop for pocket 10s, so I decide to fire 100 into a pot of 150. The player in the middle decides to fold, and our boy Jeff decides to put in the call, so it looks like we're definitely gonna get our refund in this hand here. The cutoff looks it over, looks back at his hand, shakes his head a little bit, grabs his chip off of his cards, gives them one final look before throwing them in the muck, and then we are off to the turn, heads up with our boy. The 4 of diamonds peels off on the turn, and I'm trying to calculate how big of a bet sizing I can go with here with this pot sizing. So I go with 225 into 3 and some change. I'm hoping to get Jeff to fold out any sort of draws here, and then if he does have a bigger pair than mine, I'm hoping that he shoves. And after he shoves, I looked down at my stack and I realized I don't have any fold equity. I did not notice that I basically put like 3/4 of my money into this pot already. I was just trying to bet according to the size of the pot, and begrudgingly, even though I know I'm behind, I put the rest of it in there. Should have asked Jeff to run it twice to see if we could get lucky and get half of it by hitting our set, but the river comes a 3 of clubs, doesn't change anything, and he shows me aces. Super unfortunate. Pretty much both played our hands face up. We probably could have just kicked it and checked it down with our homie, but I always play my hand the way I play my hand, despite who is in the hand. And there's nobody else I'd rather give it to than my boy Jeff. Nice hand, Jeff. We rebuy after that last hand and end up playing another PLO Bomb Pot on the dealer change. We end up just having some fun with the friends and end up chasing again with 2 pair, and somebody else has once again a better hand. So we instantly donk off the money that we just rebought. But it's okay because we pick up pocket queens in the following hand. Not too long after that, I decide to open for $20 under the gun +1. We end up getting 4 callers. We're pretty short stacked. Pot's about $100. We're beating the board. I just rip it for my remaining $65 after the action checks over to me. The button decides to be our only customer in the remainder of this hand as the other 2 players fold. The run out comes 5 of diamonds and then a jack of clubs. We are still beating the board, and our opponent shows us queen deuce of hearts for the flopped flush draw, and it totally just bricked out on him. These last couple hands aren't anything too special, so I'm just gonna kind of fly through them. We played another PLO Bomb Pot, and we actually end up flopping a straight on this one. Unfortunately, another player on the table also flopped a straight, so we ended up chopping a small amount of money. Very next hand, we pick up 9-10 suited, end up hitting top pair on a board, fire, and then scoop another tiny little pot for an inconsequential amount of money. Hand after that, we got queen 10 suited. Kind of the same thing, just standard opens with a couple of limpers, and then we just end up scooping the pot here. Hand after that, we pick up pocket queens. There's a bunch of limpers because I straddled for 6 on the button, and then I raised to 25. Nobody calls, so we're getting a little under 300. And then moving to the final hand of the night, we end up getting short stacked. I missed the hand that we lost a bunch of money in, probably another PLO Bomb Pot to be honest, but I open with ace jack offsuit for 25. We end up getting it all in on the turn. I had the nut flush draw and just ace high. Our opponent had a king high flush draw and ends up hitting his king on the river. So we get felted here, and then I get up for the night. What session? We played some good hands bad, some bad hands good, some good hands good. We're all over the place, but overall we ended in a loss. Let's jump into the numbers. Okay, so before we go over February, let's just do a quick recap of the last 2 months. So it looks like in December, we played 4 sessions, total for 18 hours, wasn't very much, and we were down $240. I don't know if we played all those on the actual vlog. I think this might be the total for December. Anyhow, we played 10 sessions in January for a total of 45 hours and 3 minutes. We made $1,546, which averages out to $34 per hour. Not bad. And then you guys are gonna have to wait for February and March. This session was played on the 2nd, so we're gonna start going through all the February content, going over the actual session breakdown. We bought in for a total total of 490. So we probably bought in for 200, added an extra 100, then bought in. So I probably bought in for like 2 to 3-ish, or maybe 290, and then reloaded the extra 200. And we couldn't run it back up, unfortunately. This is what our graph looks like right now. Our last session was the $1,000 loss, and now we lost another couple hundred. So we're dipping down pretty big time, but that's poker. We'll just try to tighten it up the next couple sessions and see if we can get that back. Well, that's all she wrote. Next week's episode is going to be really good, so make sure you tune in. Thanks for watching as per usual, and I'll see you guys next week.